There's a moment most dog owners know without ever quite naming it. Something in the house went wrong. A cushion destroyed, a shoe chewed, maybe just a tone in your voice that came out too sharp. And now the atmosphere has shifted, and your dog knows it. Not because you pointed or raised your voice, not because you said a single word. They knew before you turned around, and the way they responded, that particular lowering of the body, that specific quality of stillness, triggered something in you that felt unmistakably like recognition, like they were sorry. Most people assume that's wishful thinking, a projection onto an animal that simply can't feel remorse the way we do. And the skeptics aren't entirely wrong about that. But here's the part that tends to catch people off guard. The behavior is real, it's intentional, and what it actually communicates turns out to be something far more interesting than guilt has ever been. What researchers have discovered over the last 2 decades isn't that dogs feel shame the way humans do. It's that they possess a far more sophisticated social toolkit than anyone expected, one built specifically for repairing ruptures in relationships they depend on. And the science behind how that toolkit actually works doesn't diminish what you feel when your dog does it. If anything, it makes it considerably more remarkable. The first thing to understand is that your dog isn't reacting to what happened. They're reacting to what they detect in you. Dogs process human emotional states through multiple simultaneous channels. Micro-expressions in your face, shifts in posture, changes in the rhythm of your breathing, and even biochemical signals in your scent that change measurably when you're tense. Research published in 2016 confirmed that dogs can reliably distinguish the scent profile of a stressed human from that of a calm one, and that this detection alone triggers a corresponding physiological shift in the dog's own body. So when you walk into a room carrying frustration, even frustration that has nothing to do with the dog, your dog has already registered it. The behavior that follows isn't a confession. It's a response to something they've read in you before you've said a word, and that distinction changes everything about how you interpret what comes next. The dog isn't reacting to a memory of what they did. They're reacting to the emotional weather system that just walked through the door. One of the clearest signals, and one of the most consistently misread, is what happens to a dog's body when relational tension enters the room. The spine softens. The shoulders round slightly forward. The weight shifts back in a way that makes the dog appear smaller than they actually are. Ethologists, scientists who study animal behavior in natural environments, call this postural appeasement, and it's a deeply conserved behavior across social mammals that evolved long before dogs ever lived in houses. What it communicates in the precise language of canine body mechanics is not guilt, but de-escalation intent. The dog is making themselves physically non-threatening as an active signal directed at you. It isn't accidental, and it isn't random. It is one of the most purposeful things a dog's body can do in the presence of social conflict, and it evolved specifically to prevent ruptures in close relationships from becoming permanent ones. What makes this even more striking is that dogs perform these adjustments even when they have no idea what triggered the tension. The signal isn't about knowledge of wrongdoing, it's about reading the relationship and responding to protect it. Here's where the science takes a turn that most people don't anticipate. When researchers studied how dogs respond to owner-directed tension compared to tension from an unfamiliar person displaying identical emotional cues, they found something revealing. The appeasement behaviors, the softened posture, the careful movements, the slow, tentative approach were significantly more pronounced when the tension was coming from the owner specifically. The dog's response wasn't calibrated to the emotion in the room in the abstract. It was calibrated to the relationship. This tells us something important that tends to get overlooked. Your dog isn't performing a generic stress response when they do this. They're performing a targeted repair attempt aimed at the specific person their well-being is most fundamentally bound up with. That distinction matters more than it might seem because it means what you're witnessing isn't anxiety. It's attachment in action. A stranger in a bad mood is background noise to your dog. You in a bad mood is a crisis that requires an immediate response because you are the relationship that defines their world. There's a chemical dimension to all of this that rarely gets discussed outside veterinary neuroscience. When a dog initiates physical contact during a moment of tension, a slow, careful approach, a gentle weight against your leg, a quiet resting of the chin on your knee, their brain releases oxytocin, the same bonding neurochemical involved in human attachment. But here's the critical part. The release is contingent on the contact being accepted. Dogs who initiate this kind of proximity and are met with withdrawal or continued coldness show a measurable spike in cortisol, the primary stress hormone that can take up to 40 minutes to return to baseline. What this means practically is that when your dog carefully crosses the room toward you after something has gone wrong, they're taking a genuine neurochemical risk. The attempt to repair is written into their body chemistry, and the outcome shapes how safe or unsafe the relationship feels to them at a biological level going forward. Repeated rejection of these approaches doesn't teach a dog to stop seeking closeness. It teaches their nervous system that closeness itself is unpredictable. And unpredictability, for a social animal, is one of the most corrosive forms of stress there is. Something that gets overlooked in most conversations about this behavior is the role of timing, and why dogs can appear remorseful about something that happened hours ago in an empty house with no witness present. Dogs don't have access to the retrospective logic that human guilt actually requires. The ability to trace a current emotional state backward through time to a specific past action and feel bad about the action itself. What they have instead is an acute sensitivity to the present emotional environment and a highly developed drive to stabilize it. This is why a dog can display what looks exactly like remorse over something they did long before you arrived home. It isn't because they've been sitting with it. It's because the moment you walked in and your body said something is wrong, their social brain immediately activated its repair protocols. The behavior looks like an apology about the past. It is actually an intervention in the present. And this is the piece that completely reframes how owners should respond. Because punishing a dog for something that happened hours ago, in the presence of their appeasement display, doesn't register as consequence. It registers as the relationship becoming suddenly dangerous for no reason the dog can identify. One of the more counterintuitive findings in canine social cognition research is that dogs who have secure attachment histories with their owners respond to relational tension with more visible appeasement behavior, not less. You might expect that a dog who feels safe would show less anxiety in a tense moment, and in terms of internal distress, that's actually true. But in terms of visible outreach, the opposite holds. A securely attached dog has learned, through accumulated experience, that repair attempts work, that reaching towards you brings the relationship back to warmth. So when something strains the connection, they reach. A dog who has learned that reaching doesn't help, whose previous attempts at de-escalation were met with continued punishment or withdrawal, often goes quiet instead and waits. And that quiet, it turns out, is the version worth paying closer attention to. It isn't calm. It's a dog who has concluded through evidence that trying to close the gap is not worth the risk. That is a very different internal state than peace. And from the outside, the two can look nearly identical. All of this reframes something that owners tend to get wrong at the exact moment it matters most. When a dog approaches you carefully after tension, body curved slightly, movements deliberate and slow, eyes soft, and you respond with continued coldness or with a correction aimed at something that happened hours earlier, what the dog's nervous system registers is not justice. It registers the failure of a repair attempt. And over time, repeated failures teach the dog's social brain a conclusion that runs directly counter to what most owners want. That when the relationship is strained, reaching toward you doesn't help. That the gap doesn't close. Dogs are not holding grudges, and they are not plotting. They are updating predictions. The quiet, continuous recalibration of what to expect from the people they live with. And the prediction they update most readily, the one that shapes everything else, is whether closeness is safe, which is quietly the foundation the entire relationship is built on. The good news is that this system works in both directions. Every time you soften when your dog reaches toward you, every time the repair attempt is met with acceptance, you are depositing something into a neurological account that your dog draws from every single day. What's remarkable about all of this isn't the apology itself. It's what the apology reveals. Your dog has built such a detailed internal model of you, of your moods and rhythms and emotional patterns, that they can detect a shift in the relationship before most humans would consciously register one, and respond to it with a precision that took millions of years of evolutionary pressure to develop. Every careful approach, every softened posture, every tentative crossing of the room toward you is evidence of how much the connection means to them. Not in a sentimental way, but in a neurological one. The bond is literally written into the way their nervous system operates. They are not hoping you'll forgive them for something they remember doing. They're trying to bring back the version of you that feels safe to be near, which makes the next question worth sitting with. If this is what happens in the moments of tension between you, what happens in all the hours when you're simply gone? What does your dog actually experience when you're not there at all? That's exactly what we look at in the next video. Dogs alone at home, what they actually do.